right, welcome back, guys, to Injustice for All with Judge Joe Brown, and I believe this is episode 20, and it could be 21. And today we are going to talk about China, and we're going to talk about President Trump and President Xi Jinping deal. Hi, Judge. How are you?
All right.
All right. So you text me the article, and this is really before I even seen it hit the news. But you text me this article here, and I want to share it.
President Trump is announcing a finalized trade deal with China. He says the United States will get magnets and rare earth metals from China, and that tariffs on Chinese goods will go to 55%. The president also says the U.S. relationship with China is excellent. ABC News foreign correspondent Britt Clennett joins me from Hong Kong with more on that. So, Britt, what else are both sides getting in this agreement, and what happens next?
Hi, Diane. Yeah, well, we haven't heard China respond to Trump's comments yet, but it is late in the evening here. China was hoping for an easing of U.S. export controls on semiconductors, AI chips, things like jet engine tech, and it's really unclear at this stage what they actually have agreed to at this point. The president clearly approved it. We haven't heard that she has given the green light after 2 days of very intense talks in London, we believe. What we do know is that the two sides had agreed in principle for the framework for implementing a consensus reached in a phone call between Trump and Xi. That's according to Chinese state media. But it took only a few days for the mood to sour post-Geneva, we have to remember, as the U.S. curtailed semiconductor and aviation exports to China, indicating that exports of critical minerals, just haven't reached the levels that America had agreed to during America and China had agreed to during the May meeting. Now, Beijing also accused Washington of breaching its non-tariff pledges made in Switzerland. The U.S. side has been seeking restrictions on rare earths, we know, and magnets in particular. We know that China holds this near monopoly on so-called heat-resistant magnets that are made with those rare earth minerals. That's a crucial component in electric vehicle motors, as well as military hardware. That's something both the US and Europe have been recently running low on, partly due to supplies and pledges to Ukraine, as we know. And a reminder, Diane, that these talks come at a critical time for both economies.
Meanwhile, President Trump is celebrating after a federal appeals court ruling allowing his tariffs to stay in place. How significant is that decision, and what are you watching for there?
Yeah, so it basically means that the president's tariffs can remain in place for now. The federal appeals court ruling that they couldn't take effect while legal challenges play out. So this essentially extends a pause granted shortly after another panel of judges ruled in late May that the import taxes were illegal. Remember, it was April 2nd when Trump unveiled this unprecedented global tariff by imposing import taxes on most of America's trading partners, including its biggest allies. Now, the Trump administration had warned that any interruption to its steep duties could very much undercut the president in terms of negotiations with world leaders. But the administration must still argue the case that the president used his emergency powers in the most appropriate way by doing all of this. And the Trump administration, for its part, has very much indicated that it's willing to fight this all the way up to the Supreme Court, Diane.
All right, Britt Clennett in Hong Kong for us. Thank you.
You're listening to the machinations of what they call Article 3 courts. The Constitution specifies the U.S. Supreme Court and leaves such lesser courts to Congress. But things work themselves up. So, yes, a district court judge can enter a decree that's enforceable. Circuit courts of appeals review them, may impose stronger strictures or lesser or wipe it out. And you may have the various circuit courts of appeals with different rulings. So the Supreme Court steps in, and if it sees fit, grants what they call a writ of certiorari. In other words, a certification that this issue is important enough for it to consider. And then it resolves the matter to set the law for the whole country. The president, under the Constitution, is the chief diplomatic officer and may negotiate everything up to treaties. If they're treaties, they have to be ratified by the Senate. Once they become ratified, they become part of the supreme law of the land. That goes along with the Constitution. Such laws as are necessary to implement the Constitution and ratified treaties. Now, some people don't like what's going on, but to show you the deal that seems been worked out, 55-10. In other words, China is going to impose 10% tariffs on certain American goods, and America is going to impose a 55% tariff on some of the Chinese goods. It just goes to show that because we have allowed things to get out of control and too many of our domestic industries being allowed without tax consequences to go abroad and set up a manufacturing base overseas instead of here in the United States, of transferring job opportunities overseas instead of keeping them here in the United States, things have gotten way out of balance. And that's not good for either the selling country or the buying country. So they sat down, they worked it out. The Chinese know this, the Americans know this, but the dumb bunnies in blue don't seem to get it. And they have their social agendas. So what you're looking at is 5 years worth of mess that started under the Biden administration, which was a carryover from the Obama administration, and its general incompetence in the running of the diplomatic, trade, and international diplomacy of the country. It's getting straightened out. And also, there's another article I sent you that shows that, guess what? In spite of all of the predictions by the far left, the blue boys and girls in Congress, that it's going to be a disaster and inflation is going to soar, guess what? It is tamed down and it's dropping. And that's the wear of it. There are some other things like in the international field that temper a lot of international relations. Russia has some of the world's largest deposits of scandium, which become vital in the aerospace industry for making aluminum alloys extremely tough. We don't have much scandium here in the United States, but Russia has a lot of it. So if we're going to keep on our high-tech level with things like jet engines, gas turbines, and things like that, we need scandium. And since we can't get it but one place, that means we have to maintain sort of amicable relations with Russia. Same thing with China.
So I had posted, you saw me when I posted, this is, that was Trump's Truth Social post announcing, the deal with China is done. We are getting a total of 55% tariff. China is getting 10%. Relationship is excellent. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the art of making the deal.
Yes.
Now, Iran. I wanted to share this.
You have spoiled brat Obama, who is the richest person to ever sit in the White House. And you have incompetent George W. Bush. And you have nincompoop Joe Biden, who has no background in this kind of thing at all. And they've just let the whole diplomatic thing go to hell over the last 25 years. So now you have somebody who was in for a brief while, back in again, who knows the art of the deal. And these little cupcakes in D.C. wearing blue They know all about their little special programs and their little sweetheart agendas that are wasteful. I sent you another one dealing with their thing about they drive so many Americans out of the job market, put so many on welfare that the country can't afford to sustain. And it's just one real live mess. It does not work good. That's like saying, okay, I'm running for office and I'm going to make sure that the junkies get all of their favorite drugs, no enforcement. You
Well-
might have contentions about marijuana isn't harmful, but yeah, what about cocaine, crack? What about heroin? What about fentanyl? All kinds of other nasty stuff out there.
So I wanted to play this clip here. This is Trump at an interview talking about Iran.
Do you think you're going to be able to stop Iran from enriching its?
I don't know. I did think so, and I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to them, but I am much less confident of a deal being made.
Do you think you?
Translation, more messed up crap in D.C.
So what is it with Iran that is hard to come to a amicable deal?
Well, a number of nations in the world have nuclear weapons. Iran was working vigorously on acquiring those. And we've had on again, off again, inconsistent public policy, diplomacy, and such like when it comes to keeping things under control. And the Biden administration, once again, let something else get out of control beyond its reach. And at this point, it looks like Iran has just gone too far to stop.
I want to read this here. So it says Russia to Iran, give us the uranium so you can stop fighting with the US. Russia just offered to scoop up Iran's extra nuclear material and turn it into fuel like a radioactive recycling service. They say it's to help the US and Iran finally strike a deal after years of nuclear drama and zero chill. Talks restart Sunday, and Iran's hinting at a new framework plan to get things moving. Meanwhile, Iran's uranium stockpile just jumped 50% and could make around 10 bombs, right? So,
Remember, the United States itself only made 3 bombs by the end of World War II, just 3. And they bluffed the Japanese into thinking that we had more. It takes a while. Now, this is not unusual. Back the late 1970s, it seems that India had come into possession of nuclear weapons, and the U.S. decided to offset that by arming Pakistan. And it looked like bin Laden was the conduit of the exchange both ways, weapons and the cost for the weapons. And he delivered the engineering plans to Pakistan. That's one of the reasons why they kept him safe for so long, right outside one of their military bases. Well, some of that hit the fan later on when it came to those arms for Contras things and the exchange of Stinger missiles, which it also looks like bin Laden arranged. And they seem to have tried to cover up this just blatant disregard for American law that flatly forbade the Reagan administration to involve itself in this arms trade. and they tried to kill bin Laden. They successfully scapegoated Ollie North, Colonel North. He wound up getting acquitted on a Fifth Amendment technicality. But bin Laden wound up being very, very pissed off because the U.S. tried to kill him after he had been a friend of the United States for a long time. And our CIA and our intelligence network has a habit of doing that on a frequent basis, developing an ally and then pissing them off by double crossing them.
Mm.
So we still have about 2,400 unaccounted for Stinger missiles out there. So that's not a good thing.
So here's the thing, maybe you want to make this plain. Iran, Russia, China, they are all part of BRICS. But BRICS doesn't have a bank to print any type of currency. But
they don't need a bank. They can deal with the exchange of currencies and such like within their own systems. That's BRICS, B, Brazil, R, Russia, I, India, C, China, and you get South Africa in there, and it's expanding. So it's becoming an alternative financial.
And even with that, America, Trump, still able to sit down and make a deal with China, right?
Mm-hmm.
Russia is saying to Iran, listen, stop fighting with them, just give it to us. And because they know if you give it to us, the U.S. is not going to come barking up our tree.
No.
However, Trump said him and Putin, either they talked on the phone or they will be, or someone is going to be, I think Putin is coming here to visit Trump. But it's communications, lines of communications is still there, right? Making some type of progress.
Yeah, see, here's the other thing, too. Let's take what's happening in Ukraine. Russia hasn't had a vigorous shoot 'em up since the experience of of Afghanistan back in the 1980s, late 70s, 1980s. That's been 40 some years ago. They badly need some combat tested senior and mid-level officers and non-coms, and it's giving them an opportunity to develop those cadres. So it's in their best interest. They're also learning to fight what essentially is a semi-peer battle with drones, missiles, all sorts of high-tech stuff going on. Whereas the last thing we've been involved in is asymmetrical warfare, where it was something we invented a la the Revolutionary War in 1775, which is coming up on the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army next month. So that's the celebration we want to have. But whereas we have been dusting it up in Afghanistan, Iraq, and such places, we've got a situation where Russia and Ukraine are battling it out on the classic open-landed tank country that was the battleground for some of the most vicious fighting in World War II. It's tank country. So tanks are not obsolete in spite of people's prognostications. It's just some technology needs to be developed. And Russia, Putin has been getting rid of some of its old, dilapidated hardware so that the legislative powers in Russia will be compelled to spend some money on some new tanks and new technology. And that's going to be very interesting. They will have a leg up on how to fight these kind of conflicts that we won't have. we can fight in a sand pile and in a jungle, but that's not on the open steppes in Eastern Europe.
So Trump first term in 2016, had he, because I believe he I believe he did win the 2020 election, but had he officially won the second term consecutively in 2020, do you think when you have consecutive terms, that kind of makes our nation economy, our relations with international countries stronger and on the right path? Or could someone come in after his 2020, which would have been now, let's say we would have had a new president now, undo what Trump did?
I don't think that's going to happen because the Democratic Party is still bankrupt in what they're trying to produce. They haven't got it. The American public doesn't want boys in girls' bathrooms or in girls' sports. It doesn't want rainbows slathered all over a wall of an elementary school and an extreme effort on behalf of the government to pervert its children. It doesn't want stuff like that.
The question that I'm asking is,
what I'm saying is this. That aside, the American public is not buying into much of anything that the Democratic Party has put out there. They're lost. So you've got J.D. Vance coming up on the horizon for the GOP. And I think people like J.D. Vance. You've got talk again of putting up a failed Kamala Harris. But again, the 31.5% of the committed Democrats want Buttigieg.
no, stop. That's not what I'm saying. I said,
No, I'm just saying.
The question I originally was asking you, Trump won in 2016. If he would have won in 2020, it's a hypothetical question. If he would have won in 2020, how strong would our country be when it comes to international relations with China, Russia? When it
than it is now. That's what I was getting at. Less so than it is now. In other words, the American public hadn't realized how bankrupt the Democratic Party side was.
Wait, if Trump, wait, I don't understand. You don't understand if Trump.
I got what you're saying, but if Trump had won
8 years,
if he won for 8 years, he wouldn't be as strong as he is now. See, in other words, there is all this trend in American political history of appreciating a president more after he's been out of office than when he was in. There's also this precedent in American history of saying, wait a minute, we thought this guy was really the bomb. Now we find out he was nothing. So what has happened is the public got 4 years to digest what it was to be without Trump and what the alternative was. And they're saying, we're going to continue somebody that has been groomed and is a continuation of MAGA, Make America Great Again. Not these people that are trying to tear it down, whine, beg, and plead and say, oh, please help us. We are such children from cradle to grave. They're saying we resent that. We are strong men and women. That's how we got to the top, and we like what we are seeing. Donald Trump has delivered more than any other president in a long time when it comes to keeping his promises. He's doing exactly what we voted for. So, yeah, we like this. We want more of it. And the Republican Party, if it self-corrects, will be in an ideal position to push more of that, whereas the Democratic Party just pushes more of what we are now deeming to be just general incompetence. The cities have gone to hell, and everything that's run by blue just seems to be, what is it? Let's welcome in all the illegals so they can take over the country without going through the protocols. Let's risk the lives of the American public. Let's give away our job markets. Let's let people be given control of our children to put what we think are sick ideas in their heads. And the public doesn't want that. So what's going on now is if Donald Trump hadn't been out for 4 years, so you could see the contradictions heightened under the Biden administration and Harris, you wouldn't realize how well off you were under Trump in the first place. And he might have been a second term somebody, but he would not have been as popular as he is now. His programs would not be as appreciated as they are now, and there would be more reticence by both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party to deal with real reform. See, when Trump comes in the first time, he was not a real live Republican. He was something else. And he got in, and he was going to give the Republican Party their wish list in the beginning and then say, hey, it didn't work. I tried to help you, so now let's do it my way. But if there had been that continuity, I don't think people would have appreciated like they do now. Like, hey, this guy wasn't bad when he was in his first term. Look what we got.
Yeah.
They cheated to get it.
The American people had to go through, had to suffer. The American people had to suffer.
Smacked upside your head a time or two so you get the idea.
Right. Someone like when women, you men, you don't know a good thing until it's gone. And we have to exit. And then you realize, oh, I had a good thing. I want that good thing back. So
that's analogous.
Let me just say this before we go. Just a little PSA. You don't have to elaborate too much. You kind of have been feeling a little bit under the weather. It could be allergies or whatever. So I don't want people to think that I'm forcing you to do anything but
no, I'll break that down. What's happening is blue run cities again. Memphis used to be infamous for its yellow fever epidemics. And they set up very early, more than 120 some years ago, this massive program to spray for mosquitoes to keep down the risk. Well, some of the local yokels decided we didn't need it and the money would be more advantageous to them if they could steal it or divert it to some silly program that didn't work. So they stopped spraying for mosquitoes. The same treatment for mosquitoes is the treatment that you administer for ticks. So we have a deer tick problem because the local blue idiots decided not to be strict on enforcing codes. And they've allowed people to build because they get bribed by the people who build. And they no longer have to get environmental checks, although they're hollering about Elon Musk and XAI violating some nebulous false claims of environmental concern. And what has happened is deer ticks are being spread heavily in the county because you are displacing a lot of deer populations. And some tick-borne infections are spreading from East Tennessee through mid-Tennessee to West Tennessee, and I got hit by it, and it's not anything pleasant, I'll tell you that. So that is a problem. That's a breakdown in the administration of cities under the blue banner. And these are some of the less obvious but very profoundly negative impacts that come from incompetently run city areas.
So,
by the way, did you see something else? I don't know if I sent it to you, but the Justice Department prepared a list of sanctuary cities and counties. And in Tennessee, there are two sanctuary areas, the city of Nashville and the county of Shelby, which embraces Memphis. So those two have been trying to talk about sanctuary city. And for the last several months, I've mentioned that in Memphis, the idiots here in the county and the city are trying to push sanctuary city status.
All right. So, but you're dealing with deer tick-borne issue or whatever. But that was just a little PSA.
It's
So
bad.
yeah. So thank you, Judge. This was a quick episode, and appreciate you. And I want you guys to like this video, share this video, comment below, share your thoughts, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.